The CPI report, Child Protection in Iowa, brought to you by Vocal, Victims of Child Abuse Laws. You can watch our program on Mediacom Channel 15, Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. You can also watch it Wednesday evening at 9:30. You can email us at vocaliowa@mchsi.com, where we take phone calls from parents that would like to talk one-to-one with us. My number is area code 515-276-3956, and John's number here in Des Moines also is 515-282-2672. My name is Don Burgmaier, and with me at the controls is my co-host,
John Harvey, and welcome to the CPI report. CPI, that stands for Child Protection in Iowa, and it's around that general topic area that we wish to inform families of central Iowa, also of the Council Bluffs, Omaha area. And we're doing some switching over there in the Council Bluffs area. Right around Thanksgiving time, we'll be producing our program on DVD. So it may be, don't be terribly alarmed if it comes across in slightly better technical quality, because we kind of like that DVD, and we should compliment Cox Cable for upgrading their equipment so they can play DVDs. One big advantage is it's cheaper to mail a DVD than it is than the standard VHS tape. So we're pleased that we can cut down on postal expense and increase the quality of the production at the same time. And those are not tiny issues when you're on a tiny budget. So we're pleased that we have both of those things going for us. We're also going to be facing a General Assembly. The General Assembly is not going to have a whole lot of money to spend this time around. In fact, without a budget, without a tax increase, they're not going to be able to get all of the things that they want to do this time around, so the leadership says. So it's going to be an interesting battle over dollars this time around. Everybody wants more money. The Board of Regents needs more money for the university system. And it seems like the roads people will be asking for an enormous amount of money to maintain the roads. I thought we did that through other tax maneuvers, but now apparently it's costing more and more to install new roads and to maintain those roads. Iowa, among the states in the Union, probably has the most extensive road system of anywhere. I get out on some of these county roads, and it doesn't seem like there's probably 2 cars per month that pass, but the system is maintained beautifully. I don't know where they get all of the money for doing roads and bridges and so forth. They spend a lot of money, but of course, you probably notice that they're also picking up a lot of money at the pump. Well, basically, getting back to the General Assembly, there's a lot of things that are going to be spent, a lot of waste as far as I'm concerned, particularly in the area of child protection. Something near to $2 million is handed out in child protection programs. No one knows for sure where the money is spent. It's sent to a private organization that then hands out the funds to the various counties. The child protection programs are not the same throughout the state. Now, if the need for child protection is uniform across the state, one would think that programs and the way to remedy the problems would be uniform. It isn't. The only thing that's uniform is that we're losing the money, some $2 million. And that money could be spent better in other ways. Now, the family that faces difficulties with the DHS has to hire, or they think they have to hire, an attorney in order to seek some remedy to the invasion of the Department of Human Services. So when they get into a situation like that and they have to put out $10, $15, $20,000, I do not see how that waste of money for attorneys and other expenses can enhance the family's ability to function or to make improvements in their general functioning, family functioning. Now, if it doesn't improve and it isn't necessary in the first place, maybe it would be wise for the legislature, instead of looking for ways to spend more money, perhaps they should look for ways of minimizing the intrusion upon Iowa families. Many of these cases should never be brought to the attention of the Department of Human Services. It seems as though now they're doing their best to maximize the intrusive effect. And that is a sad story, because every time they intrude, they do more damage to the family than they do help. And I would like to find any case that would be willing to come on television, or to simply give us a letter that we can read on television telling us that your family is better off now that DHS has intervened, torn your family apart, and your family is better off as a result of all of the massive services that DHS and the juvenile court has provided. I have yet, in 20 years of working in this general area, found a situation where a believable story of real help and assistance has been available. So write me, would you? Or give us a call, or however you choose to communicate with us, or come on the program and tell us that your family was charmed by their activity with the Department of Human Services. So I say to the legislature, instead of figuring out ways of spending money, perhaps you could look at ways of curtailing the services of the department where they are not needed or wanted. It seems strange that we engage in projects like this where it really is unnecessary. That's not to say that children shouldn't be protected, but God found a simple recipe for that, for protecting children. He calls his protection department Mom and Dad. So perhaps we could assist Mom and Dad in doing their God-assigned job in watching over the children, and let the social workers find some other valuable task that they could perform, instead of dipping into the government feed bag at enormous cost and interrupting and basically curtailing the functioning of the family. You know, it's rather interesting, this television program that we have. Whenever we come on television and we talk about a specific family, the Department of Human Services and the courts get all wrinkled up about that. We had one just recently we talked about. We didn't mention any names, but people got wrinkled up about it because they knew who we were talking about. And we named real names of officials, and they got wrinkled up about it. Um, Now, what we were doing is doing our best to tell the truth about how the department functions, um, and what and the take that we have on it is that its functioning was totally inappropriate. And we put it on television so that the public, you there in your own homes, listening to the information that we give you, the best we can from the truth of the matter, and let you decide whether that action taken by government was appropriate. Now, we also have something called First Amendment rights. We also have freedom of the press rights. And it is our notion that we should exercise both of those to the extent that families are better protected from the government that seeks to protect them. Why should we have, by the way, I'd like to shut down the organization, this whole idea of VOCAL. We wouldn't really be needed if families weren't being harmed or hurt by the bureaucrats. So I'm looking for the day in which we can lock the door and shut down our activities. But until that happens, we will probably be speaking forth the truth as we know it, and pointing fingers at officials and others who are doing their level best to destroy the family. We'll be talking later on about another program called the COPS program, and I mentioned that in connection with another family that we dealt with. But COPS program is taking millions of dollars to have a cop in your kid's school. What are the police doing in your child's school? In the meantime, let's find out a little bit about court reform. We have a very talented guest on the program. We can't even call him a guest because when they're around for 3 or 4 years, it's hard to think of them as guests. But Terrance Walker is the judge of the judges, and when he goes into the polling booth, he takes that talent with him, and he'll give you some kind of an idea about judge retention. We can't vote them in, but we can sure vote them out. And perhaps we should take a listen to what Terrance Walker has to say about court reform. Terrance?
Well, thanks a lot, John. You always give me a better greeting or build-up than I probably deserve. But yes, I'm the judge of the judges because somebody has to judge the judges. Everybody's judging us, so we need to judge the judges. We have to keep the officials in line. We have to be able to point fingers, and if people get wrinkled up, then maybe they need to get wrinkled up. Maybe they need to get ironed out too. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the retention elections, because every 2 to 4 to 6 or even 8 years, depending on the rank of the judge, all the way down from magistrate, district associate, to district judge, to appellate court judge, or Iowa Supreme Court judge. Depending on the rank of the judge, every 2 to 8 years, they have what's called a retention election, where we, the voters of Iowa and some other states, but Iowa is one of the places where we have this law, where we can go and say yes or no to keeping the judge on the payroll. And that's a good thing, because we have to have checks and balances. And that's what's so good about this system, is that we have these kind of checks and balances. But these kind of checks have not been actually implemented by us the past 48 8 years that these provisions of the Iowa law have been in place as far as retaining judges and voting them out. I think the last judge, as I'm reading here from the article, the last judge from, this is in the Des Moines Register in December or October 10th, the last judge to be actually voted out was Judge Rodney Ryan in 1994, Polk County District Judge. And I think that involved some sort of sex scandal, if I remember correctly.
And the Bar Association didn't support him either, did they?
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the shortcomings of this retention election. We don't get any information. We don't get any unbiased information. All we get is the Des Moines Register reporting on what the Iowa lawyers and the Bar Association believe to be true about the judges. And according to them, they have a survey which actually rates the judges in 12 different areas. Anything from temperament, knowledge, and clarity. Some of the judges got high ratings, like Michael Hoopert of Polk County, 97%. Judge Colin Witt got 97% as well. Some of the female judges didn't fare so well. I don't know if there's some sexism going on here or what, but there was one District Associate Judge, Christine Dalton Plouffe of Davenport, who only got 66%. And Judge Rosemary Sackett on the Iowa Court of Appeals only got 78%. But most of the judges, it seems like most of the male judges got 80 or 90% in that range. I kind of question that because I do think Rosemary Sackett is actually one of the most fairest judges I've actually can say is on one of the higher courts.
Amen to that one.
You know, and I've read a lot of her opinions, and they seem to have a balanced approach, and they have a clear explanation as to what and why she's ruling what she's ruling. You don't get that a lot of times in the courts.
Maybe we ought to be viewing the lowest percentage for judges as the best judges there.
Yeah.
Just the opposite of what they're saying.
I think we ought to not give much weight to this lawyers' poll because they're in the same industry as the judges. They're in the legal industry. Well, you know, if you have, let's say, who's a popular figure here? If you have the recent popular figure of the day here is Joe the Plumber. Well, if you have an industry that's a plumbing industry, and you have Joe the Plumber, and he's rating all his fellow plumbers to tell everybody how good they're going to do. Well, if he knows them and he does business and he's in their face all the time, he's probably going to have a more favorable opinion of them than Joe Blow, the customer out there who got ripped off by Roto-Rooter and has paid a $10,000 bill to get their sump pump and everything else fixed in the house and is still broke. So, you know, of course, Joe the Plumber, who's in the plumbing industry, that befriends and gets work from Roto-Rooter, is going to have more favorable opinion of Roto-Rooter than Joe Blow, the guy that got ripped off by Roto-Rooter. And the point I'm trying to get at is this. If we're going to court and we experience what's going on in the court as citizens, our opinion should matter more so than any bar association or anybody tied into the whole legal industry. And I think that is something, and that's what I've been pushing for the past several years, is an independent review committee or commission, much like Jail for Judges has been pushing for the past decade or so to get implemented, so that we have some sort of unbiased opinion, so that we can actually go to the polls this November 4th and every November that they have these elections and have an informed choice or informed criteria and informed opinion to base our vote on, because nobody has time to go and look at all the judges' opinion. I mean, unlike myself and John, I mean, we probably read more than most people, but you know, it's believe me, it's very boring. So people in the regular course of their daily activities are not going to go and look at the Iowa Court of Appeals or Iowa Supreme Court website and look up legal opinions. They're not going to go observe court cases. They're not going to do it. So What do they base their decision on? Well, most people base their decision on this stuff in the paper from a poll from lawyers, or they might base it upon personal experience. But not too many people have a whole lot of personal experience in the courts either, unlike myself and John and Don. But I could tell you from my personal opinion, I mean, I can tell you that, I do think that Judge Colin Witt, which is a judge that I've had personal experience with, he's a very commendable judge, and he does a fair job, and he's very courteous and patient, and obviously knowledgeable. I mean, I had a traffic court case that I took to trial that he actually presided over about a month and a half ago. The one shortcoming that I can say of him and most judges is that when it comes time to submit the jury instructions or to make a crucial decision in the matter, they always seem to side with either the state or the more high-powered attorney, and I found that to be the case with Judge Colin Witt. So I mean, everybody has their shortcomings, but when you're going to submit jury instructions, and it's a case on a driving case, and you omit one of the crucial elements of the case for the jury's consideration. I mean, it doesn't matter how fair you are, how nice you were, how courteous you were, how knowledgeable you were, because at that crucial point of the trial, a whole sense of injustice can occur in a matter of just a minute. Out of a one-day trial, a judge making one thoughtful decision about the case can ruin it. And I'll just make a simple example. Say, for instance, there was a law that said you can't drink Kool-Aid, and that you was going to court and you was trying to defend your case, and you had all this different things you wanted to present, and you wanted to show that you was drinking water. There wasn't no Kool-Aid pack or a Kool-Aid scoop in your water, so it couldn't have been Kool-Aid that you was drinking. It was water. So you made an eloquent defense, and you presented this, and you submitted the molecule testing of whatever you was drinking, and it showed it was H2O. Well, I don't care how nice the judge has been all day to you, and all the witnesses and everybody else is there, and how courteous has been and everything. If you get to the jury instruction phase, and the offense of drinking Kool-Aid requires proof on one of the elements that there was a Kool-Aid package that was opened up and put into the water, and the judge admits that, then that judge is not only unfair, but I think if he's doing that on a regular basis, I think he should be voted out of office. And so on that basis, I think we should vote. I would say we should vote a couple of these judges out of office. I'm not going to name names. I think there's a few on here that may deserve to be named, like Judge Hootnick. I mean, I've read some of his opinions in the Iowa Court of Appeals. I don't really agree with him. He particularly sides with the powerful and the elite and the state in a lot of instances, and I don't agree with that. If we're in a nation full of laws, it's supposed to have equal protection of the law, and everybody's supposed to have equal justice under the law. Judges shouldn't always side with the state, and they shouldn't always give you this rationale, which was done in my traffic case. Well, Mr. Walker, I've given you some points on this matter. I think I'm going to give some to the state. There shouldn't be a rationale that everything should be handed out even-handedly in the court case. True, there's rules to go by, and it should be fair even-handedly. But if the law dictates that you have an element of offense that should be submitted, and that's the supreme law of the land, that's in the Constitution, that you have to have all elements of whatever offense is charged to be put in the jury instruction, then I think that should be done regardless of who was given what earlier in the proceeding. And that's just the way I see it. But did you have any input on what you wanted to Any of these
Yes.
judges you wanted to vote out? I mean, there was a few of them here from Polk County.
It is a little bit difficult task, as you say, to sort out which judges should be thrown out and which ones, because we don't face the judges that much. That they are not the kind of public figure that other public officials present. The judges may or may not. Be something that that you're aware of. However, the rule that I would follow is this: since lawyers and these people can go on television themselves, they can write papers, they can make themselves known to the public if they wish. I would say that if you don't know enough about a judge to hire him, then fire him. In other words, if the goodness of a judge is not loud enough in the community that you can detect his worth, then don't hire him.
Yeah.
I think sooner or later, and that's something that you can control, and that is evaluate the judge based upon what you know, what you have heard from that judge or from others. And by the way, they have relaxed the rules on judges and attorneys getting into public and telling or to advertising and that sort of thing. So with that relaxation of the rules, you should know a little bit about the judges. And if you don't know enough about the judges, tune in on Channel 15 and listen to Terrance Walker. He is likely to give you a clue about some of the judges that step out of line. And
I want to know.
by the way, that's another thing that you can do. You can write to us here, Terrance Walker, at don't send it to Channel 15. Send it to the email site that you see at the beginning of this program, where hopefully we can put it on at the end of the program.
Yep.
And tell him about judges, and see if he will read the evaluation, so that all of your friends and neighbors in the area heard by Channel 15 and that channel over in Council Bluffs, so that you will be well equipped to know about these judges. We told you about one of them today, and that's Rosemary Sackett. Rosemary Sackett is a treasure, a legal scholar, and I don't know why her rating among other members of the bar is so low, except that she may be siding with families and against the prosecutors who would like to take the children away from the families. Well, if they don't like what she does, and they're not evaluating her on the basis of her legal competency, sure, she's going to get a low score. And I would say a good pat on the back to Rosemary Sackett, because based upon what you have done, Rosemary Sackett, Your Honor, on paper is commendable. And if the lawyers in your area don't like that, then let them argue the case before you, or let them argue the case in the Supreme Court and overturn your evaluation in the Court of Appeals.
I have one other thing real quick, John.
Sure.
One other evaluation, I think, one other evaluation process is made by some concerned citizens, Mr. Daniel Dooley out of West Des Moines. He's part of Iowans concerned about judges. He actually implemented a website called iowajudges.org and put it up, and he actually submits surveys to judges so they can respond
Did he do that this time around?
Yeah, he did that this time around, and it appears that there's only about 15, 16 judges that responded to his survey request. Um, and unfortunately, none of the ones in the second judicial district, which encompasses Polk County, have responded. There was one in our viewing area in Council Bluffs that responded, a Judge James Richardson, and he basically he answered maybe 2 of the 15 questions that were submitted. Um,
Those were good questions too.
yeah, they're pretty intense questions, and I do kind of understand Judge Richardson's response. He didn't really want to get cornered on any legal opinions or anything like that, but at some point, I think that we really need to have, instead of this merit process, we need to have some sort of state advice and consent process where we actually can get an understanding of the judge's view on the judicial office and understand what is the basis for his philosophy, and try to get an understanding on since most of these judges are retained for a long time, even though they probably shouldn't be, we need to get an understanding of what they're going to do to keep up to par while they're in office. Because a lot of times they'll get lazy. They'll sit there and rely on their educational background. Well, 20, 30 years into the job, your educational background really doesn't play a major role in your decision-making process. Once you've been accustomed to just, doing things day by day, and you have a process and procedure you're going by. If you don't educate yourself, if you don't try to know more about the law, if you don't try to know more about people and broaden your perspectives and understand the world that you're living in, and the Constitution, continually updating your knowledge on that and the laws, you're not going to be a good judge. Bottom line. I don't care what your educational background is, and this Judge Richardson, kind of funny. Even though he was appointed in 1986, which was some 22 years ago, in his letter, in response to this survey, that's one of the things that he set forth as a something to submit to the survey. Well, the survey didn't ask for his educational background or his resume. And if you went to school back in 1975, that really doesn't matter in 2008. We need to know what you're doing now to maintain some sort of semblance of of fairness in your office, and how you're going to be fair to people and parties that are coming before you, and how you're going to be knowledgeable, and how you're going to be able to effect justice. That's what we want to know. We don't want to know what you did back in 1975. That's irrelevant now. So, in that vein, I think that's what we really need to be paying attention to. What the judges are doing now to be in office.
Correct.
And if they're not doing anything now, like the one judge that actually undertook on his own to go and he started learning more about the African American community. There's judges that went for continuing education, and until recently, I don't even think that was required for them to do continuing education. But I think it's commendable if they're doing that on their own, especially. So that's the kind of judges we need in office. We don't want the ones that's talking about what they did in 1975 or even 1980. That's long gone. It's too old. We want to hear what you're doing now to be fair. And so when a pro se defendant comes in your court to defend his case that he wasn't drinking Kool-Aid, and he gives evidence that he was drinking water, we want to know that guy's going to be exonerated. We don't want to have a judge in there that's so tied to process and procedure and tied to his powerful connections and doing what he thinks is right, that's going to keep him in office, that he's going to omit the jury instruction that pertains to what makes up Kool-Aid, which is water and a Kool-Aid packet. that's my simple example. I just wanted to share.
Okay.
I know that's
Don.
kind of simple, but
I got a couple judges I'm going to comment on from some limited experience, I guess, somewhat limited. Richard Blaine, for one. Uh, I had action in front of him, and it went on for, well, it's actually still going on, but for 9 months, I guess, at this point. Anyway, I had asked 3 or 4 times for him to make a ruling without oral arguments and put it in writing. And at one point, the state filed a paper and made some comment as though they didn't want to come to court. Anyway, Judge Blaine gave the attitude that he always has oral arguments. So we always had oral arguments. We had, I think, 3 hearings with oral arguments. They weren't very long. Anyway, the last one, I had already again filed a motion saying make a decision without oral argument. We get to court, and I have all my paperwork filed. He has all the information. In the previous hearing, he criticized me for taking up 10 minutes of the court's time with an opening argument. So I come to court the last time and have the paperwork filed. He can read the whole thing. There's no use taking up the court's time. He didn't want to have the court's time taken up, so I said, Your Honor, I have nothing to say, and I stand on my paperwork. And he didn't know what to say about that, because I assume every attorney that comes in front of him always has something to say for oral arguments. But he'd already made it clear to me that he didn't want to waste time on my case. And so he stuttered around. He didn't know what to do at that point. He expected something from me. And finally he turns to the state attorney and give them an opportunity to talk. And she said, I don't have anything to say either, Your Honor. And that really floored the judge. He rolled his eye. I don't know what he did. Anyway, he took some time. He didn't know what to do. Finally, he said, well, if I'd have known that, I wouldn't even set up oral arguments. And I said, Your Honor, I've made several requests that you just make the decision without oral arguments. Well, after it's all said and done at this point, I came to the conclusion I agree with Terrance and this judge. When somebody's up against the state, guess who he's going to rule for? Well, that's the way he's ruling in my case. I want to make a comment about Doug Staskell. I had a hearing in front of him a few years ago, and now looking back on it, every time if I have an issue, which occasionally I have a DHS issue in the court, this is going on 20 years. You'd think eventually the courts would say, hey, why do we spend all this time? Burgmaier has proved he's innocent. Why don't we give him what he wants? Well, anyway, Judge Staskell, I came to court on another issue, wasn't DHS, and he held a 15-minute hearing, and I was demanded any put in writing that the fact if he had jurisdiction or he did not, put it in writing, and he refused to do that, and we went on for about 5 minutes in court, and he said, announced he was going to have a continuance. He didn't tell me how long the continuance would be, how many hours, days, weeks, years he was going to continue this case. I left the courthouse, and an hour later, after I'm gone, he continues the case and ruled against me. Not only did he rule against me, he raised the cost against me, doubled my fine, without me being able to object.
That was Staskell?
That was, what did you call him? Staskell, yeah.
I don't know. Sound like Staskell? I would say Staskell would be a rascal.
So, I appealed that, which still stays in the Polk County, but it was appealed to a higher level in the courthouse. And guess what? Staskell makes another ruling on the appeal issue. What good is it appealing if he has control all the way through? Well, anyway, since then, if I have any other hearings scheduled and he comes up on rotation, there's an automatic deal that judges are picked. He, all I have to do is say, I don't want you to be my judge, and he steps down immediately. He has never given me any trouble on that. But I don't think that's justice, where a judge controls everything straight through the appeals. Well, the end result, there was another judge, don't get me wrong, but he was in the middle of the appeal process and made a ruling against me in the appeal, and he should have, as soon as he made his decision in the first hearing, he shouldn't, that's my opinion, I don't know all the law, but I think, well, anyway,
That's what they tell you. They say if you don't like our opinion, you can appeal. They don't say, well, if you don't like our opinion, then you can appeal to me. It goes to another judge. Most judges, when you appeal, they say, well, we can't do anything else in the case. So
is Judge Price up for election again?
No, I think it's just Blaine and Staskell. And from what you're saying, we should vote out Blaine and Staskell. And you had a good rule. I think you had a good rule of thumb, John. I think mine is if you're in doubt, vote them out.
That's what I was going to say.
And I think based on what you're saying, I'm in doubt about both of these guys. So you won't see me endorsing all 60 of the judges up for retention. You're going to see me endorse maybe a few, but I'm in doubt about a lot of them. And I think there should be, until we get an adequate system in which we have judges that can be educated on a continual basis and their perspectives improved on a continual basis, and we stop having incidents like these happen, which happened to me in my traffic court case, and like what happened to Don in his your legal case involving your trying to get your paperwork. Then I think that we need to continually rotate them out. Sometimes power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That what Lord Acton is famous for saying.
Right.
So we gotta use some checks and balances so we can have a balanced system.
Lord Acton said that absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
So I encourage you to get out and vote. We got the presidential election, but also the judges. And
well, it may be too late if they tuned in on Wednesday.
Well, that's true, but we are taking time to talk about this and hoping that the people hear this on Sunday. So, if in doubt, it's pretty easy. Once you get up there, all you have to do is look at the no box and put a check mark in there, meaning no, you don't want to retain these judges. So, no, 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 no. Every time they put something up to vote on, it's always the yes side for spending money, 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 money. So I encourage you, if in doubt, always check no, 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 no on that election.
And what you're saying here about retention of judges also goes, for those that are listening on Wednesday, goes for all future elections as well. Yep. Once you get in the habit of voting the judges out, you ought to maintain that habit.
And I think we should be more so like, well, what has the judge done good that we've learned about? Not, well, we haven't heard anything bad, so let's keep them in office. I don't think that's a good rule of thumb to go by, and nor is this poll or survey by the lawyers, because it just doesn't. It's not an independent body. What are they to say? Well, these judges are fair. I mean, they're working within that framework. They're in the same industry. They hobnob with the judges. They have lunches and stuff like that with judges. So how can we say that this is a disinterested group of people when they're doing that? And since the election is been, the whole theme lately has been change. We need to change out the judges. I think that's a good thing. We need to keep the theme relevant for the retention vote. We need change in the judicial spectrum as well.
By all means. Well, if it's rotten, we need change regardless.
Yeah, and if it's if it's a dirty diaper, it needs change. So
that's right.
if it's a dirty courthouse, that needs change. So
That's
we
right.
need to vote them out.
Don, you've been working with a campaign. We can't say we can't endorse anyone on this program. We can't even say vote for this person. But this is one person who is running for Polk County Sheriff, and a good deal of background and qualifications. Did you want to mention anything else there, Don?
She's been involved with the sheriff's office for several years. It's my understanding she's very knowledgeable what's been going on in the corruption side, and she talks about the desire to straighten that out. So you got an opportunity to vote if you want a change in the sheriff's department.
Okay, thank you, Don. And did you have anything else there, Terrance?
No, I think we
Okay.
said about enough.
Okay.
I want to use the last few minutes for
You bet.
wrapping up some other topics.
You bet.
Go
Oh.
on for on and on about the judges. I'm sure.
Okay. Well, it's good information to know about the judges. These are high-ranking officials. They need our attention. They need our respect. They need our honor. They need all kinds of support from the public. But in turn for that, we need to be sure that they are competent, that they exercise, make their determinations based solely on the evidence and not on any other input. When they rely on other input, they come up with bad decisions. I saw one case. This was a simple traffic case in which a man was found guilty. It cost him $131 for being found guilty for having a defective turning light. Now, his turning light was okay, but when the prosecutor or when the officer reported, he reported it not okay. Now, the burden of proof is on the officer in these cases beyond a reasonable doubt, simply because you stand to lose your income if you're wrong. But he says the light did not work. Now, the defendant reported that he knew the lights did work because you can tell from the driver's seat that the whether or not your blinkers are working. There is a cycle of flash, and if you can hear that click, click, click when your flashers are on, that cycle is changed in frequency, and you can distinctly tell, any motorist can distinctly tell. Well, the prosecutor didn't believe that, the cop didn't believe that, and the judge didn't believe that. It's too bad that these three individuals didn't know enough about operating their automobiles to give the defendant the benefit of the doubt. When they refuse to give the benefit of the doubt, they are outside of their area of discretion. They are abusing their discretion. And they can't say, well, we didn't know, because a judge is supposed to know. And when they're that far out of bounds, it's a shame. But I think it behooves defendants to call the court's attention to serious errors of that sort, and
Was
not be getting people for outage of a lamp and charging them $131 because a filament no longer works. Of course, in this case, it did work, but
so what I was going to ask you. I hate to interrupt you, but
okay,
what,
sure.
so what was the whole? I mean, how did they prove that the light didn't work? I mean, did they test it, or did they just say it wasn't working?
There was no test of the light. There was no video showing that the light didn't work. It was only on the officer's stated opinion in court that the light didn't work. What
Wow.
proof did he have? Zero proof. Well, that's zero evidence, and you need evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that the light did not work. Now, his car is equipped with video. He didn't prove up using the video. He should have. And then he argued with a man who knows about automobiles. And I guess that's a dangerous thing for a defendant to be knowledgeable. But in the absence of some level of knowledge on the part of the judge and some level of knowledge on the part of the prosecutor and some level of knowledge on the part of the cop, perhaps it was wise for the defendant to speak up. And by the way, he didn't have to speak up. It was the state's responsibility to provide evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that he violated Iowa's safety laws and under 321, which is a whole pack of stuff. But can you imagine everyone being guilty simply because the officer says he was guilty? Saying so doesn't make it so, does
Right.
it, Terrance?
No, I disagree with that too. I mean, I don't understand how someone could just come in and say, well, his light's not working, and that's a crime because the light's not working. And that was my impression, because I had a similar traffic ticket. My headlights weren't working. This has been about a year and a half ago during a blizzard, or right after a blizzard. You know, I guess some ice had got, it was an ice and blizzard storm or whatnot. Some ice had gotten into the light some kind of way, and I guess had basically killed it. Well, it was my impression when I read the law, and I actually found the citation and showed it and sent it to the prosecutor, and they agreed with me. It's my impression of the law is that they're supposed to give you a warning and give you 72 hours to get your light fixed. They're not supposed to just ticket you. They're supposed to give you time to get it fixed.
I've got a couple of those in my lifetime.
But this officer, in my case, didn't give me that warning. Well, I'm smart enough, fortunately, I was smart enough to read the law and get it fixed within that time, send a copy to the prosecutor's office and a copy of the law to get the traffic tickets dismissed. But I think that it's very scandalous that in this situation that they're not actually respecting that person's rights under the law to get a warning to get it fixed within 72 hours, and then only get a ticket if they get stopped subsequent to that. That's my understanding of the law, and I think that's travesty of justice that he had to go to court on this, and then on top of that, just get convicted on some he say, she say.
You bet. Right.
John, do you
Okay.
know the name of the judge?
No. I'd give it if I knew it. Okay, I want to wind up with one quick article here. It's called Cops, and it was a press release on September the 11th. I wonder why 9/11 is so important here. Well, the cops announced a $14.4 million gift from the government in school safety grants. Washington, D.C., U.S. District Justice Office of Community-Oriented Police Services, or called COPS, today announced a $14.4 million in grants to 143 local law enforcement agencies and municipalities to enhance school safety in 34 states. The grants were awarded via Cops Secure Our Schools program, which provides funds to improve security at schools and on school grounds. This means that your son or daughter in school might have interaction with cops at the drinking fountain. Cops are going to be all through the school, and these grants permit the schools to have a cop in your building. I don't know why schools need to function with have to have cops to control. If your school is so bad that it has to have a cop to maintain order, you'd better shut it down and find a school that doesn't need a cop to maintain order. It seems strange to me. Now, one of the things
What
I've been
about
watching
elementary
on local,
schools?
Yeah.
Why do you need a cop in an elementary or elementary school?
Doesn't that seem strange?
That's very strange.
Well, of course, there can be kids who are obnoxious in elementary school. I imagine some of the obnoxious adults around in our community probably were obnoxious kids at one time or another. But they don't need a uniformed, armed police officer in their lunchroom, their study halls, their hallways, and their bathrooms. But this COPS program started back in the year 2001. It was a Clinton type program in which he wanted to put 100,000 cops on the street. He must have slipped up because these got put in schools instead of on the streets. So our problem is still on the streets. Okay.
The sheriff's office is behind the COPS program.
That's right. They get the grants. Okay, now I want to speak before we run out of time here. Des Moines schools have a television network of their own, a television programming facility of their own, and they've shown many times cops being trained at an abandoned elementary school, a vacant elementary school. Can you imagine? And they came on the air and kept saying, well, we needed to have this program, because cops need to be trained in the actual elementary schools so they know how to get around. You mean a cop couldn't take over and secure a building unless he has training? I found out why it was necessary for them to have all this training, because there was grant money set aside for training. Okay, if there's grant money set aside for training, then you go after the grant money in order to get the grant money. And so if it means that the cops are instead of patrolling, they're out there learning how to take down elementary children or whoever it is that has the penknife, or someone who's threatening, or whatever it is. Isn't it strange that because grants are available, then we can use those, we can grab that federal money and do training? Did we do training? Was there training for cops in your school when you went to school? Now all of a sudden we need it because the money is available. See you next week.